Hey guys, how are we doing? We're back with another video from Too Spooky, and this is every Kekkei Genkai in Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. It's 51 minutes long, but I really like the Akatsuki Rings one, and like I said, I want to check out all these new things. I'm back at mine. I've got my hats, I've got my normal setup, the lighting is bad, and the sound should be okay now. I'm not in a loud echoey room, or not in my girlfriend's place, although she did have the cool Attack on Titan poster in the background and all that stuff, where I was just this, yeah. But anyway, let's do this. Let's check out every Kekkei Genkai in Naruto and Naruto Shippuden.
How's it going, everybody?
Hello.
Too Spooky here. And today I'm bringing you guys something a little bit different from my usual content.
Yeah?
It's not too much different, but after this video is over, I would really appreciate it if you guys could let me know what you thought and if it's something you would like to see more often.
Okay.
So with that, today, we're going to be talking about Kekkei Genkai.
Kekkei Genkai.
We are going to be going over what exactly a Kekkei Genkai is,
Cool.
how it works,
Right.
every single different type of Kekkei Genkai and how they work,
and
along with any additional information or stipulations that I feel are necessary to relay.
Interesting.
I also want to say that I'm going to be talking about Kekkei Genkai that appear in both Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. So
Cool.
I will not be discussing things that happen in Boruto. However, there still may be
Cool.
a few instances where I mention Boruto, or something that happens in Boruto. And finally, just so you know ahead of time, my pronunciation is absolute
I am the same. I love how
so
he
I will
is
likely
okay
be
with that.
mispronouncing multiple names
I get-
or phrases. But anyway,
even just the way
let's
I
start
pronounce
out with
Naruto,
what exactly
it's like,
a Kekkei
oh,
Genkai is.
Akatsuki.
A Kekkei Genkai is basically some sort of ability that is genetic,
Mhm.
meaning an individual
Oh,
can only have a
so
Kekkei Genkai
cool.
if it is genetically passed down through their family or their clan in this
Mhm.
case. Kekkei Genkai is also known as a bloodline limit for this reason. So,
Bloodline,
as you can
yeah.
imagine, or as you probably already know, there are a ton of different Kekkei Genkai in
Yes,
Naruto.
there is.
But even though there are a bunch of different kinds individually, there are also a few different groups these individual Kekkei Genkai can fall under. The first group are known as Dojutsu, which are Kekkei Genkai abilities that come from an individual's eyes.
Yep.
These abilities can only be used if the individual has a specific pair of eyes that are passed down through that family. The second group do not have a specific name,
Or
but are generally called
handed to you.
combined nature transformations. Each of these combined nature transformation Kekkei Genkai are formed by mixing one chakra nature with another to
Boom.
form a completely new chakra nature. Something I want to add with this is that although it is relatively common for Jonin level ninja to have mastered two chakra natures,
Right.
it is impossible for them to mix these natures without a Kekkei Genkai.
Oh,
So it's not
okay.
like anyone who can use multiple chakra natures can just
blend them together and do it.
simultaneously
Right,
mix
okay.
them together to form new natures. They do, in fact, need to be born with a Kekkei Genkai
To be
do
able
this.
to do that,
And
right.
the final group is also unnamed. But these Kekkei Genkai result in the individual being able to manipulate some aspect
Like
or part
transform.
of their body
Right.
that a normal person could never possibly do. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at every single Kekkei Genkai that falls
This
into
could be
each
cool.
one of these groups. But before we do that,
But-
it should also be mentioned that although it is only possible for individuals to have a Kekkei Genkai if they are born with it, there have been multiple instances in the series where someone has achieved or gained Kekkei Genkai through different means.
Yes.
However, it should
There you
also be
go.
noted that it uses
That's
up
what I
a
meant by
lot
being
more
passed
chakra
to,
for
like
someone
Kakashi,
not
that
born with
boom.
a Kekkei Genkai
Or,
to use one. For instance, it is
Danzo.
possible for Kekkei Genkai to be given to someone by remodifying their DNA. Yamato, for instance, was given the wood release Kekkei Genkai through experiments done by Orochimaru.
From
Although this was
Hashirama and all
apparently a very dangerous process, because Yamato was the only one to survive the experiments out of 60 different test subjects. Kabuto was also able to gain multiple Kekkei Genkai
Yeah, he
by
was.
injecting DNA of Kekkei Genkai users into himself,
What a
creating
freak.
a clone of the original users that was connected
Jesus.
to his own body, and using their Kekkei Genkai through those clones. And with Dojutsu, we've seen that you can easily implant
transplant
these
it.
eyes into another person.
I'll have that, please, yeah.
Such
Pull
as
up
Obito
Sharingan.
giving Kakashi his Sharingan, and Kakashi being able to use it with no issues other than needing to use more chakra than
It
usual.
drains him
It
and
is
tires
also
him out,
possible
yeah.
for a Jinchuriki to gain access to a Kekkei Genkai through their respective tailed beast. But at the same time, this seems to be a somewhat rare occurrence. Many people are under the impression that Gaara's sand manipulation is because he gained the magnet release from Shukaku, which is not exactly true. Yes, Gaara did gain the ability to
Oh, look how
manipulate
cute
sand
they are.
because of Shukaku,
Yeah.
but Gaara does it by infusing the sand with his own chakra. It has never been explicitly stated that Gaara has any Kekkei Genkai. And if Gaara did have a Kekkei Genkai, once Shukaku was extracted extracted from
He
his
would have lost
body,
it, surely.
Gaara would have in turn lost his ability to manipulate sand if it was indeed solely
Right,
due
that
to
makes sense,
Shukaku's magnet release. But as you can see, Gaara can still manipulate sand
He can, very
even
well.
without Shukaku. Although it should be noted that in the novel Gaara Hidden, it was revealed that Gaara does have magnet release.
Right.
But this is novel only. And in Han's case, he does gain the ability to use the Boil Release Kekkei Genkai because of the tailed beast Kokuo within him. And Han would not be able to use the Boil Release without his tailed beast.
Oh.
But that's pretty much everything you need to know about Kekkei Genkai by itself.
Okay.
So let's go over each one individually.
Alright.
Beginning with the Nature Transformation Kekkei Genkai. The first one we'll talk about is the Boil Release.
Boil
Which
Release.
is the nature transformation created by mixing fire and water chakra natures.
Water.
This Boil Release basically results in a very corrosive gas or vapor that
It's
is
very
capable
dangerous.
of dissolving pretty
It
much
even melts
anything.
the Susanoo, look
This
at that.
vapor is capable of covering a wide area very quickly, and will remain in the air for extended periods of time. Although this nature is very powerful and rather deadly, it is a little bit tricky to use because it can also harm the user's allies. There
Yes,
are
you've
4
got to be
known
very
users,
careful where you
or
use
5
that.
if you count filler. These users are Mei, Han, Kokuo, and Naruto. And the filler user is Futsu. Now, before we move on to the next one, let's briefly talk about a few of the jutsu used with the Boil Release, which are Boil Release, Unrivaled Strength,
right?
which is where the user basically increases their chakra's temperature to the boiling point, which in turn generates lots of steam, which is capable of evaporating any water or ice that touches the user. The pressure resulting from this steam can also give the user increased force behind physical attacks. The next one is Boil Release, Skilled Mist Technique, which is where the user creates a cloud of mist or vapor from their mouth that is capable of dissolving almost anything, including chakra-based defenses like Susanoo, and the Erupting Propulsion Fist, which is where the user once again raises their chakra's temperature to the boiling point, and then delivers a very powerful steam-enhanced punch that sends enemies flying. Next up is the Lava Release, which is the nature transformation created by mixing fire and earth chakra natures. This Lava Release results in multiple different forms of volcanic material depending on the user. Now, that may sound a bit confusing, but to put it simply, it is possible for multiple different people to have access to a certain nature transformation Kekkei Genkai. But just because multiple people have this ability does not mean they can all use it the same way. I'll give some examples in a second here, but first let's look at the users of the Lava Release, which are Dodai, Karyu, Son Goku, Roshi, Kurotsuchi, Momoshiki, Mei, and Naruto. There are also 2 filler users who are Ituro Konjiki and Kyusuke. Now on to how this release can differ depending on the person. Mei, for instance, uses her lava release to create strong acidic mud. Dodai's lava release created a durable rubber-like substance, and Son Goku, Roshi, and Naruto's use of lava release created hot molten rocks that can appear in solid and liquid states. So as you can see, these natures can become different things depending on who's using it. And some results are unique to certain users, meaning that only they can access a certain ability even if someone else has the same exact Kekkei Genkai nature transformation. So with this particular nature transformation, there are also quite a few different jutsu, so we'll just go over a few different ones. Such as Lava Release, Ash Stone Seal Technique, which is where the user releases a thick ash from their mouth that can wrap around the user's target, which pretty much halts their movements. Lava Release, Scorching Armored Fist, which is where the user coats themselves in lava and punches their opponent. Additionally, even if the punch misses, it is still possible for the intense heat to burn their opponent if they're close enough. And Lava Release, Rubber Wall, which is where the user creates a wall of lava that has a very rubbery consistency. This rubber is also very durable and can handle multiple powerful attacks. Next up is the Explosion Release, which is the nature transformation created by mixing lightning and earth chakra natures. This Explosion Release results in users being able to use explosive chakra in combat through their techniques. The only known users are Datara and Gari, although we also know that the Explosion Corps had this ability as well, but we don't know any specific members. The way Datara used his Explosion Release was by infusing clay with his Kekkei Genkai, allowing him to essentially create bombs that he could
can just
control
travel
will.
around everywhere.
And
It's so
Gari
boss.
used his explosion release with his taijutsu techniques to create punches that resulted in an explosion
class.
with contact.
God.
Now, between Gari and Datara, they each had different jutsu that was unique to themselves.
Uh-huh.
For Gari, we had the explosion release, Landmine Fist.
Landmine
which
Fist
is
sounds
where
so
he
cool.
punches his opponent and creates a massive explosion from inside his opponent's body, which
That's
is
class.
easily able to completely obliterate individuals who are much larger than Gari himself. And with Datara, he has a number of different jutsu, but they all derive from his explosive clay, which is where he infuses his explosive chakra
He has the
into
different
the clay
C
through a forbidden
numbers,
jutsu,
doesn't
and
he?
then forms this clay into different figures, which are usually small animals or insects. These figures
a
are
clever
then
way of sneaking
brought
a bomb
to
in
life,
places.
so to
It's like,
speak,
"Ooh,
and controlled by
it's a
Datara to do
spider."
whatever he pleases. But in the end, Datara ends up using them all as gigantic bombs, as he can detonate them whenever he chooses. So he is essentially placing his explosive ability in these clay dolls and using
so
them as
cool.
controlled bombs. Next up is the Scorch Release,
Scorch
which
Release.
is the nature transformation created by mixing wind and fire chakra natures. This Scorch Release results in the user being able to heat up an opponent's body to the point where all the
Very
fluid
dangerous.
inside their body completely evaporates,
Goddamn.
which in turn leaves them as a dried up
Considering
corpse.
the body is
only
made of
known
how
user
much
of this
percentage of
Kekkei Genkai was
water?
Pakura,
Being
and
able
with
to dry that
this
up's
ability
bad.
we have only seen 2 jutsu, one of which was filler. The canon jutsu is called Scorch Release, Extremely Steaming Murder, which is where
Jesus.
Pakura creates these flaming orbs that circle her body. These orbs can also be controlled by Pakura to attack her enemies. When one of these orbs makes contact with a person, it completely evaporates all of the liquids
Damn.
inside their body,
Just
leaving
instantly,
them
like,
completely dried
drained.
out and dead. And the filler jutsu is called Scorch Release, Incinerating Flare Technique,
Oh, that doesn't
which is
sound as
where
cool as the
Pakura
last one.
combines all of these flaming orbs into one big one that explodes, completely
Cool.
incinerating the surrounding area and anyone in it. It should also be noted that Scorch Release was shown to be somewhat weak to water release attacks in the anime.
Makes sense.
So there is a way to counter it, or at the very least slow it down. Next up is the Storm Release, which is the nature transformation created by mixing lightning and water chakra natures. This Storm Release basically results in the user being able to create electrical energy beams that can be used to attack enemies.
So like the
Only
Emperor
Darui
from
and
Star
Madara
Wars.
were shown to be able to use this Kekkei Genkai. But it has also been said that some ninja from the Hidden Cloud Village can also use it.
Okay, well.
From this release, we have only seen one jutsu that is named, which is Storm Release, Laser Circuit.
Laser
Which is
Circus
where the
sounds so
user shoots a bunch
cool.
of those electrical energy beams out of their hands.
Behold,
These
my
electrical beams were
laser
also shown
circus.
strong enough to pin and hold down an enemy.
I'm sorry, I'm
and
in a
from
silly
this, it does
mood.
not appear to have very much destructive power behind it. There is another jutsu that was named. This jutsu is a mixture of both Storm Release and natural energy, which is called Sage Art. Storm Release Light Fang, which is
Light Fang,
essentially
not
where the
Lightning Fang.
user shoots a very thin laser beam from their mouth that travels at the speed of light. This laser is also powerful enough to cut through a truth-seeking ball, so this jutsu has some real power behind it. Next up is the Ice Release,
Ice Release.
which is the nature transformation created by mixing wind and water chakra natures.
yeah.
This Ice Release essentially allows the user to manipulate ice. When using this ability, the surrounding
Yes.
area also becomes rather cold, to the point
Quite
where it
chilly.
makes snow begin to fall. And the user can also freeze any water in the near vicinity. The only canon users are Haku and Haku's mother. However, there are 4 other characters who can use this Kekkei Genkai from novels
but
and
that's from the
video
movie.
games, who are Hakahyo, Kahyo, Momoshiki Otsutsuki,
Makes sense.
and Rahyo. There have been a number of different jutsu created
Haku
from this
was so
Kekkei Genkai.
cool.
However, I will only be going over the ones that were featured in the anime and manga. The first one is called Certain Kill Ice Spears,
Damn,
which is where the
Certain
user
Kill.
creates a bunch of gigantic ice spikes that are capable of killing multiple people and piercing through a
pretty,
cottage. It should also be noted that
you
this
gotta be
jutsu
sure that's
is
working
anime
technique.
only. The second jutsu is called Demonic Mirroring Ice Crystals, which is where the user forms 21 gigantic mirrors that surround their enemies in a dome,
And travel
each
through
mirror
them.
showing a reflection of the user. It should also be noted that the user themselves is inside one of these mirrors, and can travel to any mirror at extremely high speeds. So it is almost impossible for the enemies inside to find out which mirror contains the user, especially because the user can move at any time. It is also very hard to dodge attacks, because the mirrors show the attack coming from all sides, when in reality it is only coming from one. So essentially this is the ultimate technique of an Ice Release user. And the final jutsu is called Ice Release. Ice Rock Dome of Magnificent Nothingness,
wow, I like
which is where
names.
the user can freeze the surrounding air to form an ice dome around the user and anyone else nearby to create a very powerful defense. Next up is the Wood Release, which is the nature transformation created by mixing earth and water chakra natures. This Wood Release results in the user being able to create wood and various other plants as well.
Every time he's saying wood, just makes me laugh. I'm so childish.
So far Hashirama has been the only person to naturally be able to use this Kekkei Genkai. Everyone else who has access to it has gained this ability through some sort of genetic material or
having Hashirama's DNAs,
also, for some undisclosed reason, this nature transformation is able to suppress the chakra of tailed beasts and their Jinchuriki. But why this is possible is never really expanded upon. Also, because many people have access to this technique through Hashirama's cells, it should be noted that these cells are very powerful, making it hard for other people to use this Wood Release. Because it is possible for this release to in turn take over the user's own body, such as when Danzo was almost turned into a tree and had to cut off his arm to save himself.
Damn.
So, needless to say, this release is very powerful. Like I said earlier, the only true user of this Kekkei Genkai was Hashirama, but many other have also gained access to it through Hashirama's DNA, such as Black and White Zetsu, Orochimaru, Danzo, Yamato, Tobi, Madara, and Obito. Because so many people have gained access to this ability, there have been a ton of different jutsu that have been developed over time. So instead of going over every single one of them, we'll just talk about a small handful so you guys can get an idea of what this Wood Release is capable of. The first one we'll talk about is Top Transformed Buddha, which is where the user creates an enormous wooden statue that has several hundred to 1,000 hands on its back, that all strike the user's enemy at once. Because there are so many hands and they're all very dense, it is very hard to block or dodge this
who would win, Hashirama or
making
Netero?
it much more deadly. The next one we'll talk about is Wood Release, Cutting Technique, which is where the user can create sharp wooden spikes from their body, and can use them either as a weapon like a sword, or as a projectile weapon to in turn fly into their enemies. And the final technique we'll talk about is called Wood Release, Wood Dragon Technique, which is where the user can create a humongous wooden dragon that can be used to restrain their enemies, drain their enemies' chakra, offensively attack, or even detonate, which results in a huge explosion. Also, like I said before, there are a lot more techniques other than just these few. So this Kekkei Genkai is capable of a lot more than what we just went over. But I just wanted to give you guys a small taste of what this ability can really do. Next up is the Magnet Release, which is the nature transformation created by mixing wind and earth chakra natures. This Magnet Release results in the user being able to create magnetic forces that vary in ability depending on the user. The known users of this Kekkei Genkai would be Raza, the third Kazekage, Shukaku, Toroi, and Naruto Uzumaki. Although, it should also be mentioned that Gaara was shown to have this Kekkei Genkai in the novel Gaara Hidden, and this Kekkei Genkai was passed down to Gaara through his father Raza. Although, this is novel only. So like some of the other Kekkei Genkai, this one has a different ability depending on who is using it. For instance, the third Kazekage manipulated iron sand, which could be used to crush enemies, or the iron sand itself could be formed into various weapons. Raza used this ability to manipulate gold dust, which was used to counter Shukaku's sand abilities, because gold has a heavier weight than sand,
that is true,
in turn overpowering it. And Toroi used his Magnet Release with a pair of special shuriken, which, to put it simply, he would throw the shuriken at his enemies, and once it hit them or any other object, that object or person in question would become magnetized, meaning that any other weapon he threw at them would be attracted to them at their
such a cool
location.
technique.
So as you can see, this ability can be used in quite a few different ways. Other than Shukaku, each individual that can use this Kekkei Genkai has at least one unique jutsu. So I will go over one per person.
Okay, here we go.
Iron Sand Drizzle, which is used by the third Kazekage to
funny
create
name.
a ton of small
Word.
iron sand bullets that are shaped like needles, that he then sends at his opponent all at once. These bullets are very hard to dodge because they are so small and
yeah,
in
they're
great
tiny.
numbers, and overall are very powerful, making them hard to block. Magnet Release. Conserving B Twin Blades,
They're big
which
blades.
is used by Toroi to magnetize anything he touches, which will then magnetize anything the object he magnetized touches, like we just talked about. Magnet Release. Gold Dust Imperial Funeral,
That sounds so
which
cool.
is used by Raza, which is basically where he creates a tidal wave of gold dust from the ground to erupt at his opponents. And Sage Art. Magnet Release Rasengan, which is used by Naruto to mix both Magnet Release and Sage of the Six Paths powers to create a magnetized Rasengan
Makes sense.
that he then strikes his opponent with, resulting in the markings on the Rasengan transferring to his enemy, in turn immobilizing them. And lastly, we have the Dust Release, which is unlike any other Kekkei Genkai, because it is in fact something completely different. You see, the Dust Release is called a Kekkei Toda, which is the even more advanced form of Kekkei Genkai, which involves the mixture of 3 different chakra natures to create a new one.
Here we go.
The only known Kekkei Toda is the Dust Release, which is the nature transformation created by mixing wind, earth, and fire chakra natures.
Damn.
This Dust Release results in the users being able to create these 3-dimensional objects, which will then expand around the user's
Such a cool
target,
technique.
and allows the user to manipulate molecules, giving them the ability to disintegrate anything
This
on
is
a molecular
also known as
level
particle
within
release,
the
isn't
boundaries
it?
of that 3-dimensional object. There are only 2 people capable of using this release, which are Mu and Onoki. From this release, we have also seen 2 different jutsu, which are Dust Release, Detachment of the Primitive World
I
Technique,
love long
which
names
is
like
where
that.
the user creates a shape with a sphere at the center that expands rapidly towards its target, and traps whatever is inside once it makes contact. The sphere in the center of that object then explodes, turning whatever is inside
crazy.
the shape
It's
to
crazy.
dust. However, the shape on the outside keeps the blast contained inside itself, so anything outside of the shape is safe. This jutsu is also capable of destroying chakra-based defenses as well, such as when it destroyed Madara's Susanoo. And Dust Release, Detachment of the Primitive World Pillar, which is essentially the same thing as the previous technique, except this one can be used
As
at
a
a
projectile,
longer range,
yeah.
essentially extending
so
the
cool.
previous technique. And that does it for all the nature transformation Kekkei Genkai. But since we are going over all of them, I'm going to quickly talk about the nature transformations that were shown in filler episodes or movies.
Okay.
Although, unlike the previous ones where we went more in depth, we will just quickly be
Briefly
going
go
over
over
what they
them,
are
please.
and what they do.
This is
The
so random.
first is known as the Crystal Release. We don't know what 2 natures are mixed to create this
Fair
release,
enough.
but it is assumed that Earth is one of them. This crystal release allows the user to turn anything from objects to moisture into crystals, making pretty much anything the user's weapon. And these crystals can also be used at the
God, I'm
cellular
having
level,
flashbacks to the
making
Naruto
them
filler.
even more dangerous. The second is known as the Swift Release, and we also don't know what 2 natures are mixed to create this release, but it is assumed at least one of them is wind.
Right.
This Swift Release allows the user to travel at extremely high speeds, also increasing their strength and making it very hard for their opponent to hit them. The third is known as the Dark Release, and we
Release.
also don't know what 2 natures are mixed to create this release once again. This Dark Release allows the user to absorb, manipulate, and release chakra that is forcefully taken
which
from an
movie is
opponent.
that?
And the final filler release is known as Steel Release, which yet again, we have
Don't
no
know which
clue
one
what
it's
2
made
natures
up
are
of.
mixed
Okay.
to create the release.
That
This
is
Steel Release
fair
has
enough.
been used twice. Once in Gara Hidden, where the user could create steel weapons, and once in the movie, The Will of Fire,
Right,
where
that's
the
the
user
one.
could turn his body into steel. So now that we're done with all the nature transformation Kekkei
Yeah.
Genkai, let's talk about the unnamed group that generally involves some
The
sort of body
physical
manipulation,
transformation one.
and then we'll save the dojutsu for last.
Okay.
The first is known as Jugo's clan's Kekkei Genkai, which is a passive ability that allows the user to absorb and in turn use natural energy without any prior training in senjutsu. Because of this constant intake of natural energy, it can cause the user to become mentally unstable, resulting in random outbursts or urges for the user to kill. The user's body also releases senjutsu chakra that will in turn cause the user's body to change or transform.
That's where Orochimaru gets
This
all the
Kekkei
ideas for
Genkai
the
is only naturally possessed by Jugo, but Orochimaru and Kabuto have also gained access to it through experiments with Jugo's DNA. This Kekkei Genkai also opens up its users to multiple different jutsu, such as Destroying Axe Fist, where the user can form a gigantic axe on their arm that is capable of blocking many different attacks, and is overall very powerful. Chain, where his arm stretches a great length, which is useful for grabbing people or objects at a great distance. Cellular regeneration absorption, where the user can absorb chakra, flesh, and bodily fluid to restore the user's own chakra and body. And Piston Fist, where the user can add pistons or even jet boosters to his arm to increase the power of his attacks. The second Kekkei Genkai is known as Sakon and Yukon's Kekkei Genkai, which gives the user the ability to break down their body at a molecular
they can share
level.
the same
Both
body and
Sakon
then split
and
off.
Yukon are the only two known individuals to have this Kekkei Genkai
So
naturally,
cool to see.
and then
So
both
different.
Orochimaru and Kabuto have gained this ability through their experiments with Sakon and Yukon's DNA. We'll mainly focus on Sakon and Yukon's use of this Kekkei Genkai, but the two brothers generally have this ability to share one body, although it is also possible for them to split into two separate bodies, along with fusing themselves into someone else's body. Also, while the two are sharing one body, Sakon is the dominant while Yukon is dormant. So because of that, Sakon generally does the fighting. But if Sakon is in need, Yukon can bring out his body parts to essentially create extra limbs.
Yeah, it's weird.
Although they technically aren't extra, they were just fused into one body. Through this Kekkei Genkai, they also have access to a couple unique jutsu, which are multiple connected fists and feet, which is basically where both brothers attack with all four of their hands or feet in taijutsu form. Attack of the Demon Twins, which is basically their ability to fuse together into one. Although with Kabuto's use of this technique, he instead creates a copy of Sakon out of his own body that has the ability to transform into the other ninja Kabuto has added to his DNA. And finally, the Parasite Demon Demolition technique, which is where one of the two brothers fuses themselves with another person, and then destroys the enemy's body at a molecular level. However, this technique does have one downside,
if they try and kill themselves,
that any injuries that the victim receives, the user also receives. So if the victim were to, say, kill themselves, they would also kill the user. And the final Kekkei Genkai is known as Shikatsu Miyaku, which gives the user the ability to manipulate their skeletal structure.
So cool.
They do this by infusing their calcium with chakra, and can therefore control the growth and properties of their bones, to form them into both a defense and offense. The user can make bones protrude from any part of their body, pull bones out of their body to use as a weapon, or even use these bones as armor. The user is also able to fire bone bullets from their fingertips as a method of having a long-ranged weapon. It should also be noted that any bone that is removed is automatically quickly regenerated. The only known person to have naturally gained access to this Kekkei Genkai was Kimimaro. And then, once again, both Orochimaru and Kabuto gained access to it through their experiments with the DNA.
Because of course you can't hang out with Orochimaru without him experimenting on you at some point.
Have access to a handful of unique jutsu, which are generally in taijutsu form, and are part of a series of dances. The first dance is called Dance of the Willow, which is where the user sprouts bones from their hands, elbows, knees, and shoulders, among a few other places, to then basically let battle decide how the user moves, so to speak. Essentially, the user just mindlessly lets themselves move with the flow of the wind, countering, blocking, and landing attacks in the process from any direction. The second dance is called Dance of the Camellia, which is where the user creates a bone sword, and then very quickly stabs his opponent repeatedly and chaotically with immense speed, making it very hard for the user's opponent to predict their movements, dodge, or block any attack for that matter. The third dance is called Dance of the Larch, which is where the user sprouts multiple bones out of their body, a couple on pretty much every limb. This particular technique is mainly a form of defense, and when they defend from an attack, they strike back with a much more powerful counterattack. This also works well for a close range defense because the user can spin to protect every part of their body at once. The fourth dance is called Dance of the Clematis, which is a two-part attack. The first part is Vine, which is where the user removes their own spine and uses it as a way to bind their opponent. Although this spine can also be used as a whip if need be. And then the second part is Flower, which is where the user uses a considerable amount of chakra to create the hardest weapon possible, which appears to be a gigantic bone lance. Then, because the user's opponent is bound with Vine, they can make sure this attack will hit them. Because this bone lance is so big, it is a bit harder to maneuver, and because it takes so much chakra and preparation to execute, the user will not use this technique unless their target is bound beforehand.
Yeah, they need to know they're going to hit them with it.
And the final dance is called Dance of the Seedling Fern. And this one is the only technique that is ninjutsu rather than taijutsu. From this technique, the user creates up to 10,000 bones that rise from the ground itself, killing anything on the surface. From this technique, the user can also merge themselves with the bones on the ground to sneak up on enemies if they were somehow able to survive, and then finish them off. And that does it for all the body manipulation Kekkei Genkai. However, just like the chakra transformation Kekkei Genkai, there are a couple of these body manipulation Kekkei Genkai that are filler in one way or another. So we will briefly cover those before we move on. The first is the Ryuzetsu's Kekkei Genkai, which allows the user to use some sort of unique reincarnation technique that can bring someone back to life at the cost of the user's life. The second is the Rinne clan's Kekkei Genkai, which allows the user to absorb someone's chakra and then duplicate their appearance and memories. The third is the Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai, which allows the user to essentially become very proficient with genjutsu. And this Kekkei Genkai is very rare within the Kurama clan. The genjutsu from this ability is so powerful to the point where it physically harms the victim and can even kill them. And because this ability is so powerful, the user can generally not control it, and instead creates a second personality that takes over the original's body. And the final is the Iburi clan's Kekkei Genkai, which allows the user to transform into smoke at any given time. While in this smoke form, the user can let attacks pass right through them, interact with any object, and even enter a person's body, to essentially take their body over physically, leading to some interesting possibilities. Now finally, let's talk about the different types of dojutsu Kekkei Genkai. The first one we'll talk about is the Byakugan, which is the dojutsu Kekkei Genkai passed down through the Hyuga clan, although it was originally inherited from Kaguya Otsutsuki. These eyes appear to be completely white, or white with a light shade of lavender with no pupils present. When the Byakugan is activated, the pupils are somewhat visible through an outline, along with large veins appearing on the user's temples. The Byakugan also has many different abilities, such as allowing the user to see in an almost 360-degree field of vision, having only one small blind spot at the top of the user's spine. And the range of this field of vision is also dependent on the user. This field of vision can be as little as a couple meters away to multiple kilometers away. It also allows the user to see through almost all solid objects, magnify small targets, follow high-speed targets much easier, and even see people through infrared vision by detecting their body heat. And its most notable quality is its ability to see chakra to an even better extent than the Sharingan. The Byakugan is able to see this chakra to the point where it can see the entire chakra pathway system, along with all 361 chakra pressure points. It can also tell if the person in question is the real person or a clone. And even when genjutsu
That's very handy to have.
There are quite a few people who have access to the Byakugan, because there are many different members of the Hyuga clan in the story.
Not like their clan was killed
naming
off
them
and
all would be
there
a little bit pointless.
select few
But
people
in
can use
addition to the Hyuga, it is possible for anyone to transplant a Byakugan into their own eye socket. The best and only example being Ao. The main reason we don't see other people outside the Hyuga clan with a Byakugan is because the Hyuga clan give each of their members a cursed seal
so that
on
it
their
can't
foreheads.
be
Once a member of the
and
Hyuga
shared
clan
outside
dies,
of the clan.
this cursed seal takes the Byakugan along with it, meaning that after death it is impossible for anyone to steal the Byakugan and use the power for themselves. The most notable fighting style that is used with the Byakugan is the Gentle Fist fighting style, which is where the user targets their opponent's chakra pressure points to not only shut down their chakra flow, but also cause internal damage and damage to their internal organs. From the Gentle Fist fighting style, the most notable technique is the 8 trigrams, 64 palms, which is where the user envisions a 8 trigram circle within their 60-degree field of vision, and then begins striking their opponent's chakra points within the circle, starting with 2 hits and then doubling that number all the way up to 64 hits, leading to their opponent's chakra flow being completely stopped. Another notable technique would be the 8 trigrams vacuum palm, which is where the user shoots a compressed vacuum attack with their palms to target their opponent's vitals from a distance. And finally, palm bottom, which is where the user strikes their opponent with an open palm and forces their chakra into that area to either stun them, or if a lot of chakra is sent into their opponent, it could even cause immense internal damage. But that does it for the Byakugan, so let's move on to the Sharingan, which is the dojutsu Kekkei Genkai passed down through the Uchiha clan, although it was originally inherited from Kaguya Otsutsuki's
It ruins
Rinne
everything
Sharingan,
as soon as you mention
which
that.
then later became Indra Otsutsuki's Sharingan, which was then later inherited by the Uchiha. Compared to the Byakugan, the Sharingan is quite different. For instance, the Byakugan is generally active as soon as the user is born, whereas the Sharingan is not achieved from birth, but rather after the user experiences a powerful emotional condition involving a person who is precious to them. When this happens, their brain releases a special form of chakra that affects the optic nerves of the user, in turn transforming their eyes into Sharingan. It was originally thought that this emotional condition had to result from stress or loss, but it can also be achieved through the desire to protect or reunite with a loved one. These Sharingan are red in terms of appearance, with a visible pupil and 1 to 3 tomo circling the eye. Although once the user awakens the Sharingan, they start with 1 tomo, or in rare cases 2. With both more use and training, the user will gain more tomo over time, until they eventually have 3. The users of the Sharingan that we know about are all exclusively Uchiha, and since we've grown to know quite a few, I will not be going over them. But just like other dojutsu, these eyes can be transplanted into non-Uchiha's eye sockets, and can be used to near their full extent. If the user is a non-Uchiha, they do require more chakra, and their Sharingan are active at all times. So generally, these users cover their Sharingan while they are not in use. Sharingan that come from the same person are also somehow linked. So if one eye from the same person were to be in 2 different people, they would have some sort of link between them. And finally, it has been stated that even though the Sharingan are very powerful, their true potential can only be used when the user has both eyes. So the most notable users of the Sharingan are of course the Uchiha. But we've also seen others such as Kakashi, Danzo, and even Black Zetsu use the power of the Sharingan when they themselves are not Uchiha. Through the Sharingan, the user gains 2 main abilities, called the Eye of Insight and the Eye of Hypnotism. The Eye of Insight allows the user to see chakra, although not near to the same extent as the Byakugan. They also gain great perception, being able to easily see oncoming attacks in combat and predict other attacks or movements, read lips, and even read an opponent's hand seals to get an idea of what jutsu is coming their way. And the final ability of Insight is the ability to copy almost any jutsu the user sees by memorizing it with almost perfect accuracy. This goes for ninjutsu, taijutsu, and even genjutsu. The user can then perform the same jutsu even if they had never heard of it until seeing it at that moment, either identically or even changing it up slightly to the user's own liking. Although the user cannot copy another user's Kekkei Genkai, for instance, because they do not have access to those genetic abilities. And now the Eye of Hypnotism allows the user to perform extreme forms of genjutsu. There are many different forms and types of this ability, but it is all focused around the user basically placing thoughts thoughts or actions into their opponent's minds through eye contact, allowing the user to stop their opponent's movements, make them relay certain information, or even take complete control of their opponent's body, and can make them do whatever the user wants them to. The Sharingan also has access to two other abilities, which are Izanagi and Izanami. Izanagi is basically where the user can warp reality for short periods of time, essentially making illusion reality, and reality an illusion, and through this can escape serious injuries or even death by warping this reality or even rewriting their destiny in a sense. And Izanami, which is where the user places a victim in an infinite loop of a certain moment that disregards their five senses, and was generally used as a way to punish those who abuse Izanagi. Although with use of either of these abilities, it results in loss of sight in the user's eye that used that ability, making them both forbidden techniques. The Sharingan can also become something completely different, which is called the Mangekyo Sharingan. Appearance-wise, it still maintains the black and red color scheme like the regular Sharingan, but this version morphs the eye into some sort of pinwheel variation that is unique to the user. To awaken a Mangekyo Sharingan, the individual must witness the death of someone close to them. Previously, it was believed that the user had to be the one to kill the person close to them. So many members of the Uchiha would end up killing their closest friend to achieve it. The Mangekyo Sharingan still retains all of the abilities the normal Sharingan has, but it also gives each user some sort of unique ability, which we will go over some of those in a minute. It should also be noted that once the user has achieved the Mangekyo Sharingan along with its abilities in both eyes, they gain the ability to use Susanoo. Although the downfall of the Mangekyo Sharingan is that it drains a considerable amount of chakra with use, and using the Mangekyo Sharingan also places heavy amounts of strain on the user physically, and will eventually result in the user losing their eyesight completely. However, their eyesight can be restored by transplanting another pair of Mangekyo Sharingan in place of the user's eyes, so long as they are close in blood ties, the ideal case being a sibling, which in turn awakens the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. The appearance of the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is basically a merging between the two regular Mangekyo of the user and the persons whose eyes they took. With these new eyes, the user gains their eyesight back, along with all the previous abilities of their Mangekyo Sharingan, but to a greater extent, and now no longer suffer any of the side effects from before. Additionally, the Mangekyo Sharingan has the unique ability to program its techniques to activate under certain circumstances, and will continue to activate under these circumstances even after death. And like the regular Sharingan, these eyes can also be transplanted into another user. Now, I won't go over all of them, but let's look at a couple of the unique abilities these eyes give depending on the user. In Itachi's case, his right eye gives him the ability to use Amaterasu, which are essentially black flames that cannot be extinguished, while his left eye allows him to use Tsukiyomi, which is one of the most powerful genjutsu techniques, allowing Itachi to essentially warp his victim's sense of time, making a few seconds seem like days, where he can torture them during that time to hurt them psychologically. In Sasuke's case, his left eye can use Amaterasu, and then his right eye has the ability to shape or warp these black flames, and also has the ability to extinguish the inextinguishable black flames. And in Obito and Kakashi's case, both of their eyes have the ability to use Kamui, but each eye to a different extent. Kamui itself is basically where the user can transport themselves or other individuals and objects to a different dimension, to avoid attacks, transport and trap individuals, or even as a method of travel. The right eye, which Obito had, was able to use Kamui at short range, being able to transport any part of themselves and anything in close proximity to another dimension, so long as they are touching the user. So essentially, any part of the user's body that overlaps with another object is seamlessly transported or warped to Kamui's dimension, making it appear as though the user can phase through solid objects. And then the left eye, which Kakashi had, was also able to send objects to this other dimension, but in the form of long-ranged instead of close proximity. So anything that is in Kakashi's line of sight can be affected. And once Kakashi has his eye set on a certain object or area that he wants to transport, all he needs to do is focus on it, which will create what appears to be some sort of small black hole that will suck whatever is in the center into the other dimension. But now that you have a few examples of what these Mangekyo Sharingan can do, let's move on to the next Dojutsu Kekkei Genkai, which is the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan was first manifested by Hagoromo Otsutsuki, who would later be known as the Sage of the Six Paths, and creator of Ninshu, which would later become ninjutsu. And Hagoromo's Rinnegan was derived from his mother's Rinne Sharingan. To actually awaken the Rinnegan, you would need to do one of two things. The first possibility would be combining the chakra of Indra and Asura, who were Hagoromo's sons. Or the second possibility would be to receive chakra from Hagoromo himself. Madara was able to awaken his Rinnegan by infusing himself with Hashirama's DNA, in turn mixing the chakra of Indra and Asura. Even though Madara was able to mix the chakra that would awaken the Rinnegan, it took decades for the Rinnegan to actually awaken, and by that point Madara was on the brink of death. And Sasuke was able to awaken his Rinnegan by receiving chakra from Hagoromo himself, which awakened right away. So it seems as though it takes a random or undisclosed amount of time for the Rinnegan to actually awaken. Like the other dojutsu, the Rinnegan can also be transplanted into someone else's eye sockets, and as long as their heritage is somehow compatible, they can use these eyes effectively. Examples of these eyes being transplanted left and right can be shown with Nagato, Obito, and Madara. Appearance-wise, the Rinnegan is a light purple color, with multiple ripples seen throughout the eye. The Rinnegan also gives the user a wide range of abilities, such as being able to see chakra and the active chakra pressure points of the 8 gates. The user can also learn and master almost any jutsu, along with mastering all 5 of the basic chakra natures, create black receivers to transmit their chakra, and even the ability to counter the infinite Tsukiyomi. The Rinnegan also gives the user the ability to use the 6 Paths technique, which is where the user gains access to 7 different godlike abilities, or paths as they're called. The Deva path allows the user to manipulate attractive and repulsive forces. The Asura path gives the user mechanized limbs, weaponry, and armor. The human path gives the user the ability to remove a person's soul, allowing them to read that person's mind, killing them in the process. The animal path lets the user summon many different powerful creatures. The Preta path, which allows the user to absorb all forms of chakra, including the majority of ninjutsu. The Naraka path, which allows the user to summon and control the King of Hell, to do a variety of different things, like interrogate people or to heal others. And the Outer path, which allows the user to revive the dead. The user can also manipulate 6 different bodies through those black chakra receivers, giving each body a different path along with all of its abilities. Each of these bodies also have their own Rinnegan through this technique, and can all see what the others see. The user can also summon the demonic statue of the Outer Path, and create chakra chains to bind tailed beasts. We've also seen that Madara can create spirit-like shadows in Limbo, that are only visible to other Rinnegan users. And Sasuke was shown able to transport himself short distances by switching himself with some other object, along with being able to create portals to another dimension. In the series, the characters who at some point had and used a Rinnegan were Nagato, Sasuke, Obito, Madara, Black Zetsu, and of course, Hagoromo. There are multiple other jutsu involved with the techniques we previously discussed, but we've already covered basically everything you'll need to know. So lastly, let's move on to the Rinne Sharingan. Now, the Rinne Sharingan is not actually a Kekkei Genkai. Instead, it is something called Kekkei Mora, which are classified as advanced jutsu that are only unique to Kaguya Otsutsuki and her direct bloodline. So any techniques that were seen being used by Kaguya are considered Kekkei Mora. Other than these stipulations, we don't really know what exactly classifies something as a Kekkei Mora. So from that, the Rinne Sharingan is a whole new kind of monster. Appearance-wise, it is red like the Sharingan, and has 9 Tomo like the Sharingan as well. But it also contains that ripple effect like the Rinnegan, essentially making it a mixture of the two. The Rinne Sharingan was first awakened once Kaguya ate the chakra fruit from the God Tree. And later on, once she fused with the God Tree, the Ten Tails also had the Rinne Sharingan. Madara also managed to briefly awaken one after becoming the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, before his body was used as a vessel for Kaguya. Along with having the same abilities as the Sharingan and likely the Rinnegan, this dojutsu also allows the user to perform 3 different jutsu or abilities. The first is the Infinite Tsukiyomi, which is the most powerful genjutsu technique that places the entire world into an illusionary dream by reflecting off of the moon. Then the follow-up technique to this is God, Nativity of a World of Trees, which is where roots of the God tree spread all throughout the world, encasing everyone caught inside the infinite Tsukiyomi, to then feed off of their chakra until they ultimately become nothing but white Zetsu, in turn using this chakra to create a new chakra fruit. The only way to save the people from the tree's encasings is to cancel the infinite Tsukiyomi, which will in turn release anyone who was not turned into a white Zetsu. And the final technique is called a Meno Minaka, which is where Kaguya teleports everyone within a certain range to one of her different dimensions in an instant. Kaguya can also create a small portal to pass through these dimensions by herself if she so wishes. And these dimensions are so far from each other that opening up a portal to them is said to take an immense amount of chakra, even for Kaguya herself. And that is essentially all the Rinne Sharingan is capable of from what we got to see.
Damn.
Although I imagine it is likely capable of a lot more scary things, considering what we've already seen it do. But just like the other categories, there is also a few filler dojutsu Kekkei Genkai, so we will just briefly touch upon each of them. The first is called the Ketsuryugan, which is a blood red eye with a purple horizontal line in the pupil. These eyes can conjure up some effective genjutsu for a number of different uses, and also gives the user the unique ability to manipulate the user's blood. The second is called the Tenseigan, which has a light blue color on the outside of the eye with a white floral pattern in the center, along with a blue pupil. This dojutsu allows the user to control attractive and repulsive forces, a lot like the Rinnegan's Deva Path, and also allows the user to even move the moon closer to Earth, along with a few other different abilities. The third is known as Ranmaru's Kekkei Genkai, which appears to be a red glowing color. This Kekkei Genkai allows the user to disrupt other dojutsu abilities like the Byakugan, perform irresistible genjutsu, and even grants the user a unique healing ability through life force energy manipulation. The fourth is known as Shion's Kekkei Genkai, which appears as a violet and purple pattern. This dojutsu allows Shion to see a select person's future, which is usually involuntarily activated to show her that person's eventual death. And the final one is known as Yomei's Kekkei Genkai, which appears as an orange color with very big dilated black pupils. This dojutsu allows Yomei to track down enemies from the reflections seen on tiny water droplets, and also helps her with her evasion skills. But anyways guys, that is every single Kekkei Genkai in Naruto and Naruto Shippuden explained for you guys.
Cool.
Hopefully you guys learned something new or found a better understanding with what exactly Kekkei Genkai is, or a better understanding of the different individual Kekkei Genkai and what they can do. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this is my first time doing a video like this, although it's not really too different from what I usually do. So if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. And if you would like to see more videos like this, let me know in the comment section down below, along with some other ideas for a video like this one in the future. While you're at it, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can be notified about the next video. And also make sure to follow me on media and Twitch. But with that, if you cannot get enough too spooky content, well, why don't you click here for 10 facts about Nagato and pain, if you want to learn more about the 6 paths of pain technique with the Rinnegan, or click here for 10 facts about Datara, which was our latest Naruto related video. And if those aren't doing it for you, well, why don't you click here for the top 10 strongest One Piece characters. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching this video today, and I will see you all soon with a new video.
Cool. That was cool. Do you know what, as well, like, I was worried, because I only, like, near the end realised how long I'd been filming this for. I know when a video is entertaining for myself when I've not noticed how long I've been sitting here. I didn't realise, like, that was near the end till then, and, yeah, that was boss. That was class. I like it. I like the 2 spooky stuff. There's still other channels I want to check out as well, and, yeah, I won't do too long of an outro because it's a long video, but yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch discuss in future videos, and I'll see you guys. Bye.